So, something we've talked about before, which I feel we're both on the same page about, is that there's so much bullshit advice that is easily accessible in very short sound bites that can be kind of detrimental to folks if it's the wrong kind of advice for their issue. But there's just so much out there that it's unavoidable that if you go on Instagram or Facebook or something, you're going to be bombarded with everybody's tips for how to get out of pain, get stronger, do this and that, solve your incontinence, whatever. And sometimes the right advice will land on the right person, and that's great. But more often than not, you come across advice that is just not appropriate for the individual, and ends up being a bit harmful if it's not the right advice for them, because everyone's story and situation is so different. Or you can have the right advice and just blow it completely out of proportion. Like when I think rolling yourself out with like a lacrosse ball, that's still quite common and it's like, it can be very beneficial and feel great. And I took that advice once when I was in my 20s, really early on in my life, to roll out my piriformis, which is like a super deep muscle and there's so many nerves around it and it's really close to like your sacrum and some other really sensitive stuff. But I was like, fuck yeah, I'll roll up my piriformis. So I did. And I feel like I rolled over some nerves in a really painful way. And I had like sacral pain for a while. And then I get a lot of, well, not a lot, but I get messages from people on Instagram sometimes who have found me and they're looking for help. And I ask them, so what have you tried that's worked for you so far? And what hasn't worked for you so far? And one person I remember saying, what hasn't worked for me is scrolling Instagram for advice. I'm like, yeah, no shit. It doesn't really have a long term. Yeah, you don't always find the right answers just scrolling Instagram. And as we both know, it's not just black and white, do this or that. There's so many unique everyone is so unique and their journeys and what will work for them at different times in their life too are going to differ greatly. Something might be the right advice for you yesterday that will cease to be the right advice for you in 5 months' time or so. So we just we just need to not be so open. Well, we should be open, but we shouldn't be so easy to believe everything that we see online, I guess is what I'm trying to say in a jumbled up way of saying it. And what I've found to be the most, I think, useful thing that we can share as information online, you and I, as movement professionals and educators, and it's just to share stories. I think we can learn a lot from stories and not by necessarily in a public space telling people what they should do and giving them advice without really knowing their unique history. But if we can just be a bit more maybe open with, here's my journey, and here's what worked for me, and here's what didn't work for me, and maybe people can get a broader sense of this is the diversity of things that have worked for various people, and it's very, very different. What's worked for me and what I'm doing now is very different from what's worked from you, what you're doing now. But there's a lot of universality along the way, a lot of things that are similar experiences and similar learnings. And yes. So, what I'm trying to say is what I'm hoping that these conversations will do, and why I wanted to have you on the podcast is to share a bit of your story and your expertise and your journey so that we can add that to the pot of things people can hear about and then make their own choices. So, Margy Verba, welcome to Movement Detectivery.
Thank you, Monica. It's great to see you, as always.
Finally, we get around to having this chat.
Yeah.
And if I was organized, I will have done an introduction to tack on to the beginning of this, but God knows I lack organizational skills. But I wanted to say that one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because I have never met someone with such a strong drive to understand the detail of how the body moves, and even when, by anyone else's standards, you can describe some function or movement of the body with immaculate accuracy, and you have several journal articles to support that, and then several case studies from your own experience, you still question, do I even know what I'm talking about? And like, of course you do, but you're just always questioning it. And I love that about you. You have this constant quest to understand more and more and more and more detail, and that makes you one of the people I usually want to ask first if I have a question about something joint mechanics or if I want to set a set of eyes on my own body, like when I was having that really bad foot problem in 2022, and you helped me a lot with that. Um, so you're just a great person to chat to about all things body and yeah. Um,
Well, I have to say back at you, you are one of my absolute favorite people to nerd out with because you'll go down that path with me. A lot of people are just like, let's, tune it out. Or they're either in one camp or the other where they sort of want to tune it out and just like some teacher said this and they took all these really good notes and that must be the truth.
mm,
Or if it's not published in a research paper, it doesn't exist. Those two extremes. And I love that you're kind of in the middle with me that, well, what
mm.
do we really know?
I don't know anything. The
Yeah,
more
I
and
don't know
more I
anything either.
do this job, the more I think
Yeah.
that, you know what, I'm not doing shit. If I just sat back and was just, sometimes I just feel like keeping someone company through their journey is all I'm really doing. And if you just give it enough time, their issues will resolve themselves through their own process internally that maybe I have no idea what I'm even doing to help. And that's an interesting space to sit in. Do you ever feel
Mhm.
that way?
Not so much, but I do believe that, sometimes it's not a specific movement that makes the difference, but it's just getting somebody to move. And the research also sort of bears that out. Like, is yoga better for back pain or Pilates better for back pain or weightlifting and people who are in a camp will cherry pick and they'll find research that supports what they believe. But really, what we're finding out more and more is people are just going to get better by moving. People who haven't moved, especially, are going to get better by moving. So, in a sense, yes, I agree that I could just sit back in a way, and maybe my job is just to motivate people to move, and maybe the specific exercises I pick don't really make a difference. I do think of myself as an educator, and I recently, maybe 5 years ago, my business has gone through several different names, but the current name is Flow Motion Education, and I very intentionally use the word education in my business name because I think mainly what I do is educate people. I mean, to me, it's shocking that we can go through school and learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. And I don't know what it's like in Canada, but pretty much nothing about our anatomy other than a little bit of sex ed, which, in sixth grade or seventh grade. Why aren't we learning how our bodies work? So I do feel like I'm not just sitting back, that I'm a little bit of a guide in the sense that I'm educating people. And I really like in my own practice, but also, I share what works for me. And in my own practice, I'm a little obsessed with actually visualizing my skeleton. So I really want to have a good visual of what do the joints look like and how do they fit together and what happens when I do this with my arm? Like, what does it look like under the covers? And I do try to teach that to my clients because I think it's so beneficial. So, and I've really, when I first started practicing, I would get people who would come in and our society kind of creates this fix me mentality and also instant gratification. Like if you're not better, in two sessions or one session or whatever, it didn't work. So, those two things I kind of felt like I was battling in the beginning. It's like, no, I've never ever thought of myself as, oh, I'm just going to come in and fix you. I've always wanted to help people fix themselves. And when you were talking about the internet or social media, there was just a lot to unpack there. But that, the education doesn't really lend itself that well to social media, but what lends itself really well to social media, if you want to get those clicks, is this is bad for you, but this is good for you. Like so black and white with no room for nuance. And well, as you well know, because we've had this conversation many times, it drives me bonkers. But on the other hand, I'm torn also. I can think of people who are on social media who are extremely successful. They've really figured out how to use social media, and I'll watch their posts and I'll go, no, this isn't bad for you and that's good for you. Or if you do this, it's going to give you plantar fasciitis, but if you do this, it'll go away. Like, but I have to stop and think and question, well, they're motivating people to move who haven't moved. They're motivating people. So should I really be so hard on them for the stories they're telling? It's a constant struggle.
Mm.
I
I
don't really know.
understand.
I don't have an answer.
This is why this, I don't know. That's exactly why I wanted to talk to you. And just to go back to that point you made about
Okay.
we're not really educated about our bodies in school other than sex education. And I just want to say as a little aside that even sex education didn't teach me what sex was. And it was really embarrassing because
Yeah.
we did sex ed when I was maybe, I don't know, grade five.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, I can't believe, hope my mom's not listening. We were talking about how a woman gets pregnant and how sex works. And they said something like, and then the sperm goes into the vagina. And I was like, but how does it get there? Like I didn't grasp that the penis goes in
Yeah.
and that's what sex is. And I was just boggled. I'm like, but how do they just like does it get on you and then it like crawls in? Like how so anyway, someone had to explain to me that the penis goes in the vagina and that's what sex is. And I was a little late to the game. So sex ed failed me. But anyway, Uh, but back to that idea of, there's no black and white answers and how you can get some advice from a video, a quick video, and it might be the right thing for one person, but not the right thing for another person. I can think of an example for me is, there's a lot of, um, and I see both sides of this, so I'm not saying that this is right or wrong, but I see a lot of stuff about mouth breathing and nose breathing. And there's one side of the fence of you must only breathe through your nose because mouth breathing is bad. And then for sure, there are evidence supporting that mouth breathing has a host of, if you don't do it chronically, it can have a lot of negative effects. Um, but we need to know what our goals are. And I'm a natural
Ex-
nose breather. So like I did the whole tape your mouth thing, breathe through your nose at night, and I was totally fine with it. I'm like, oh, this changes nothing because this is just how I am.
yeah.
But then when I was going through some troubles with my back and my foot, part of it was um, using the breath to really expand or to use the diaphragm fully and find an expansion of the rib cage that's really even and symmetrical. And there's just parts that I wasn't able to mobilize with my breath because I couldn't breathe fully enough, it felt
Mhm.
like. So I just tried breathing with my mouth because I had been so dogmatically convinced that nose breathing was the only way to do it, or else I would have a host of negative health effects and die. So I was like, well, let's try breathing with my mouth just on a whim. And I got the most lovely expansion of my rib cage and the movement of my diaphragm like I never had before. And I was like, oh, I've just been believing that I shouldn't mouth breathe, but actually, this is really mobilizing my spine in a new way. And a lot of my symptoms started to drop off after just playing with that. And it really
Mhm.
made me see like you can't just believe in one thing, or even there's a period of time for which that advice might be useful and then let go of it. And I was curious, Margy, if you have ever had an experience like that where there was something that you dogmatically believed in, and then you tried something different on the opposite side and realized that, oh, actually that's good too. I can pick and choose and both are good. What
Oh,
anything come
yeah.
to mind?
Oh,
Tell
there's
me.
quite a few things where I've gone back and forth. At this point also, I'm going to be 68 in a month. And so I've been doing this for a while and either professionally or just working on myself. So, yeah, there have been many things where I've dogmatically gone back and forth. Um, but I'll give you one example. Yeah, I came from a background of Pilates. And in the Pilates world, I know things are changing. So, just to orient people, I started studying Pilates in 1994. And I did my teacher training. I've done a few teacher trainings, but that they would have been in the late 90s. And back then there was still, I'm sort of out of the Pilates world, so I don't know exactly what's happening now, but I think that this has changed. But back then there was a lot of cueing of, like, the pull the navel to spine, engage, squeeze, tighten. And one day, and this was revolutionary in my own practice and the way I work with other people. But one day I had a business partner who was also Pilates, but her teacher was a maverick. And our teachers were kind of arch enemies, which was a little interesting. But her teacher, so anyway, she listened to me cueing one day and she just looked at me after the class and she said, "What are you doing? You can't cue the muscles. You can only cue the bones. And if the bones are doing the right thing, by definition, the muscles are doing the right thing." And I was like, "What are you talking about? No, of course I'm going to say pull in, squeeze, tighten, engage, whatever cues I used to use. A lot of navel to spine. And then one day, and I can't even tell you exactly how it happened because this was such a long time ago now, but one day I got it. And that changed my life. And I'm like, well, of course, if the bones are doing the right thing, the muscles are doing the right thing. We should be cueing the bones. So, I went in that direction and I'm still mostly there, but every once in a while I'll actually mention a muscle. And that's, I'm kind of coming back a little bit into the muscle world.
Mm,
I still basically believe if the bones are doing the right thing, the muscles are doing the right thing. And
mm,
it's, the way the brain works, it's better to cue the bones. The brain can't really figure out, I need a little more anterior delt. Um, Give me a little more anterior deltoid. How after you do that? But if I say rotate the palm up or whatever, if I'm cueing the bones, then I'm going to get the response that I want. Um, so that's one example. I'm sure there's many more. I've gone back and another thing is, you know, I think many teachers went through a phase of, or maybe it was just me, because you talked about in the beginning, I really like going down the rabbit hole and I really like accuracy. And so a lot of the stories that we would tell people, this is releasing that. Well, I don't even know what the word release means. Or, if you rub like in this direction, this is going to happen. But then I would sort of look into it and I couldn't really figure out the basis for the story. And so I kind of rebelled against all these stories that we tell. I'm fine with any technique, if you get results, but I don't really believe the stories that we tell that go with the techniques all the time. Um, but what I'm coming around to now is, does it really serve the client if if they come in and say, "Oh, I broke up these adhesions," and I say, "Well, that's actually really controversial in the medical world. You should know,"
mm,
like, does that really serve them if they believe they broke up adhesions and they're feeling better? Like, who am I to correct the accuracy of the story?
mm,
So I've kind of I'm still struggling with that, to keep my mouth shut. They don't need
mm,
to know that it's controversial. Like, if something works for somebody, why should I tell them that the story that's in their head about how and why it worked
mm,
is controversial? Like,
mhm.
how does that serve them?
Yeah.
So
I
I'm
think
kind of
especially if it's someone who isn't a movement professional or a therapy
exactly,
professional,
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
as little information as they need to know about what's actually happening, as long as they feel good doing it, whatever. Believe what you
exactly.
want. We just want them to get well.
Yeah, I mean, but they do come in with very elaborate, science-y stories, and I'm kind of
Mm.
like, maybe that's what happened. But I'm kind of like, I don't need to
Mm.
say, "Oh, that's not
Yeah.
exactly, where the science is," because how does that help them?
There's a lot that we
So,
don't know still. Like even
yeah,
just
I
how
know.
does massage work?
Exactly.
It seems like it should be really common sense or intuitive. But when I think about it, I don't really know how massage works. And as a massage therapist, That's a little bit of a weird space to live in. What do you know? I mean, this is putting you on the spot, but do you know what is the latest about how does massage work? What is a release of a muscle? Like,
Yeah,
thoughts on
I
that?
mean, I think it's been quite a while. I actually did go to massage school at one point, which I uh, might have been the school I went. I think massage training in Canada is in a different league, is my understanding from massage training in the United States.
Yeah,
And
a bit more
you can
rigorous and regulated, I think.
way more rigorous in Canada. Um, in fact, when I was in, I went to massage school because at the time I was doing a lot of manual techniques, and I only went so that it would be within my scope of practice to actually manually touch people. So, and I knew that I was never going to practice massage, but that was quite a while ago. But I think some things are we do know about massage. Like we know, I think, whether it's science or energetic or whatever, whichever world you're in, I don't think there's any dispute even within the hardcore science world, but certainly not within the energy more woo-woo side. If I and I don't mean woo-woo judgmental, I'm just using that word to make a contrast with like hardcore science. Um, I don't think that anybody would dispute that touch is important to human beings, being touched, and that our bodies are going to have a response to touch. I don't know that we're all going to have the same response to touch. Um, I think that anytime we touch the body, we're having a conversation with the nervous system and therefore the brain. I don't know exactly what happens, but when there's a conversation with the brain, it's usually a two-way conversation that, the brain gets input and then the brain generates output to muscles and tissues in the body. So I for me, that's enough of a story.
Mm.
I don't need to think we're breaking adhesions, we're releasing muscles. I don't even remember what all the different massage technique stories are. I will say that my own experience with body work, I'm just going to say this, I have never had a massage. I haven't had very many massages in my life for this reason. I have yet to ever have a massage where I came out feeling better than before the massage. And I don't have an issue
Wow.
with touch. Like I'm from
Bold
a really
statement.
huggy family and like I'm my friendship circle's very huggy and it's not I don't think I have an issue with touch. There have been times I've gone in with specific things in mind and I've communicated that to massage. Maybe I've just had the worst luck in the world. I don't know. But I most of the massages I've gotten, I don't feel like they really listened to what I said and they just did the massage they always did or what they thought I needed. My body responds really well to movement. If I'm working with a movement practitioner, it responds well to techniques like more osteopathic techniques, like muscle energy technique or a lot of the contract relax, what is it, post isometric relaxation techniques. So that's all I know. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not and what does it mean to release a muscle? Like that's I it's kind of there's so many words that are just nebulous to me to the point where they're meaningless. Like release is one of them. We've had this conversation like core. What does core mean? Oh, there's a whole list of words that are so nebulous that they're almost meaningless. But I do think, in terms of release, in my mind, it's more a conversation with the nervous system, where the nervous system might be sending inappropriate, or I shouldn't even say inappropriate, but um, signals that to a muscle to hold a certain tonus that at one point was probably appropriate, but maybe no longer is, or maybe no longer is serving the person. So in my mind, that's kind of how I think of release.
Mhm.
It's another one where with my accuracy, obsession, I stopped using the word. And then one day I had a client and I was doing, it was a strict anatomy and motion session. I really didn't do much outside of, I'm trained in many, many different techniques by now, but that particular session, I didn't do much outside of anatomy and motion except um, when I did the assessment for hike drop, and I thought that he had. I know this is going to just sound like, oh yeah, another tight QL. Well, I thought he had a tight QL, quadratus lumborum, and I muscle energy technique in my past had been magic for releasing whatever that means, getting the brain to stop sending inappropriate contraction signals, perhaps. Um, it had been magic in my practice, long time ago practice. So I was kind of almost listening to myself going, Margie, what are you doing? Why are you saying these words? Like, you don't use that word anymore. And I said to him, okay, I'm going to release your quadratus lumborum. And then the rest of the session was all anatomy and motion. And at the end, and the guy, he'd been in a terrible accident and had all kinds of issues. And he'd seen so many people. And he got a lot better. But what he said to me at the end of the session, and we did all this anatomy and motion stuff, and what he said to me at the end of the session was, "Oh man, when you released that muscle," and I realized, you know what? It doesn't matter if the word release is absolutely accurate. Like if even if I used, it would be it would be unethical if I were just, this is my issue is that, there is the concept of snake oil. Like people in pain are really susceptible and they're going to dish out a lot of money. And so, I do believe like we don't want to be snake oil salesmen. So that's kind of why I'm a little bit of a stickler for accuracy. And do I believe that if I just released his QL, it would stick and he'd be better forever? No, in a big picture, I believe that tonus will most likely, I'll never say always, but most likely will just come back unless we do work on the movement patterns and help him figure out how to move differently. So
Yeah. Well, this
it's
leads me to
another.
a good question, actually, that I think you have some lovely expertise on, or at least an opinion on, is what do you think is the role? I mean, there's so many different types of manual therapy, and I think you're right that we don't fully understand what touch is doing, and there's so many different kinds of touch, and everyone responds so differently to different kinds of touch, but clearly it's an important part of people's path. It certainly was for me, whether it was all placebo or if it was real, something happening to my body. But what do you think is the role of manual therapy? Where does it fit in with a movement program or exercise? What do you think? How should people be thinking about incorporating manual therapy into their getting out of pain path?
So let me before I answer that question, let me just say something about touch. I mean, infants who don't get touched in their first year of life develop there's a term, I don't even know what it's called, but very severe psychological, maybe detachment disorder. I don't know. So when babies are born and there's no family to hold them, I mean, they literally have like volunteers hold the baby. So it's more than um just supposition. Like we know that touch is vital.
Mm.
So I'm sorry, what was the actual question that I'm supposed to be answering? Just remind me.
What role and where does
Okay,
manual
got it.
therapy fit
Okay.
in?
So I can answer in terms of my own practice and then also sort of a generic answer. That so for people who enjoy massage, which is not me, um,
Weirdo.
I think it's great just to feel better, for people to feel better. Um, if it makes somebody feel better, well, that's awesome. I read recently on social media. I do learn a lot on social media, but the I the from an account that I think the guy is really smart, and I don't agree with everything he says, but he described that we can, when we're working with people who are injured and we're trying to facilitate the healing process, that we can think of what we're doing, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like, uh, we ultimately what we want to do is help them increase their capacity. So if their knee is too painful to walk, just take a simple example, we want to help them walk again. So increase their capacity. Um, if but sometimes, now, does manual therapy help somebody increase their capacity? Maybe. I don't know. I'm more inclined to look at strengthening and real, optimal alignment. I know that's so controversial, but I do believe in optimal alignment. Um, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the word optimal, why I'm using the word optimal versus ideal very intentionally, but I do believe in movement optimization. I am going to call bullshit on the people who say posture doesn't matter. I don't care what the research says. Um, so we facilitate increasing capacity, but there's a role for increasing tolerance, because if you increase tolerance, you've created a window possibly where you can use that window to increase capacity. So manual therapy. So actually, I can't give you a generic answer because I'm going to sort of differentiate between. I mean, manual therapy could be something that's purely an energetic modality. It could be massage, and even that is, 100. There could be 180-degree difference: soft tissue, deep tissue, Swedish, all the different kinds. In my world, I do muscle energy technique, which is an osteopathic technique, supposedly working with the nervous system. And I do joint mobilizations. So I think of those as more than just increasing tolerance, that I am actually making some kind of physical change. But no matter what I'm doing, whether it's, so when I say increasing tolerance, there are modalities that help you, that might temporarily diminish the pain in creating a window for increasing capacity. So I guess in general, that's how I would think of manual therapy. But very specifically, when I'm thinking, the manual therapy that I use mainly is joint mobilizations. And the way I think about that is, well, I do this analogy with this is how I explained it to my clients: joint mobilizations versus the movement work that we would subsequently do, why we would do them in sequence, and why they're both important. So the analogy that I use with my clients is, I make an analogy with a garage door opener. So you garage door opener, you push a button and the door opens, you push a button and the door closes. And this is exactly how I explain it to my clients. I've sort of warmed them up a little bit by explaining something about motor control in the nervous system at a very basic level. I'm not going to do that here because I think our audience are people who are going to understand that. But the way I explain it to my clients is, okay, push a button and the door opens, push a button, the door closes, and that's like the brain sending a signal through the motor nervous system to a muscle to shorten. But now, what if you go traveling for a year and you don't use your garage door opener, and you come back and you push the button and your garage door doesn't open, but your garage door opener is working because you can open your neighbor's garage. So, because it hasn't moved in such a long time, there's now rust in the parts. And that's how I explain joint mobilization. So if you haven't moved a joint in a really long time, it will actually change the composition of the tissues. It'll change the composition of the cartilage and the joint capsule. And the way I think of a joint mobilization is like getting the rust out of the parts. But then I say to my clients, but then you gotta keep it moving because otherwise it's just gonna get rusty again. So that's a long-winded answer, but the
Mm,
I kind of gave you a general answer of how I think of manual technique in general, in that it increases tolerance, giving you possibly that it could increase tolerance, giving you a window to work, increasing capacity. But the specific manual technique that I mostly use is joint mobilizations. And that's my explanation for
mm,
why I think, because I think if something hasn't moved in a long time, you're going to get changes in the tissue where an external force might be needed just to get it
mm.
moving again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you should come over and release my QL for me.
I could talk Rob through it any easily, very easily.
Oh dear. Actually, I thought of another thing too, that as a from a practitioner's side of things, the benefit of doing a massage on someone, and this is from my good friend Wency Wong in Toronto. We were talking about this the other day, and she said, "You know what?" And she does anatomy and motion and other movement modalities, so that's a big
Mhm.
part of how she works with people. And she said, "You know what? Sometimes I feel like I just need to do a massage so that I have time to think about what I need to do with them from a movement perspective." And just to make them feel comfortable and relaxed. And I'm like, fuck yeah, that makes so much sense that like I
Okay,
get that.
no, and I forgot to say that actually. I 500% agree. And I was going to say also, yeah, no matter what, there's an energetic relationship between practitioner and client. I mean, that it's just, so yes, a massage can be a wonderful way um, to make somebody feel relaxed, just like you said, and create some kind of rapport. And what
Mhm,
I use, because I'm not a massage person, if somebody comes to me and they're just like so tense. So first of all, a lot of our colleagues, for a while I couldn't take a course or be on a forum without people, well, it's the limbic system, and they'll go there. And I'm not criticizing or judging anybody else. I have made a very conscious decision that, and if you don't clear the limbic system, nothing's going to work and all that. Okay. So I have made it, first, I don't absolutely agree with that. I think that's true for some people. But I made a very conscious decision a long time ago that if I feel that what the real issue is not, joint tissue, body tissues and nervous system and movement patterns and alignment, misalignment, and yes, I'm going to say misalignment, even though some people are going to, oh, the research, there's no such thing as misalignment. It doesn't, whatever. I'm going to use that word. But if I feel that what their underlying issue for their pain is, that they're going through a divorce or whatever, I'm referring out to a psychotherapist.
mm,
I have a roster of really good therapists. Um, Not to say that I wouldn't work with them, but I'm not trying to clear their limbic system before I think in terms of nervous system and body tissues. And of course, it's the whole biopsychosocial. It really should be like spiritual, psycho, musculoskeletal, what
endocrine,
neuromusculoskeletal, the whole right.
circulatory.
And I've chosen very intentionally to kind of set boundaries, even though it is a spectrum, and I'm gonna bump up against my boundaries,
Mm,
but I've made a choice. Like I'm going to refer out on this side, and I'm going to refer out on this. I have made a choice to really stay within the biomechanical
mhm,
realm as much as possible. Yes, of course, people in pain I'm gonna have to deal with the fact that they're stressed out. I'm gonna have to deal with the fact that people cry and they're sad. And of course, I can deal with that. But the way I tend to make a rapport rather than touch, and it's just my personal preferences, I just get a little goofy. Or if they're really sad, then I might get sad with them and soothe them, and I might even shed a tear with them, or I or make them feel like it's okay to be sad. This is a big deal. Like, so it's not that I don't create a rapport. I just don't necessarily, I might put a hand on someone's shoulder or their arm when I say, this is a big deal. It's okay to be sad, you know. So it's not that I never use touch, but I wouldn't must that's not what how I create a I don't use touch necessarily to create a rapport.
Yeah, yeah. Do you need your limbic system to be cleared with a neurological technique, or do you just need someone to pat you on the back and say, yeah, fuck, that sucks. It's gonna be all right. Let's try to
Yeah,
figure out
yeah, yeah,
some
yeah,
movement to make you feel
yeah,
better. Yeah.
yeah.
You know what? We've been talking all this time, and I haven't even gotten to my list of questions I wanted to ask you. I feel like maybe a bit too late now, but could you maybe just tell us what is your actual professional title, Margy? Just so we're back on track.
I don't know. No, I made up a title, but I guess I would say anatomy and motion practitioner and anatomy and motion instructor because that is the mainstay of my practice, and I am, I tell people when they first meet me or when I'm teaching a workshop that I might sound like I'm in a cult when I talk about anatomy and motion and Gary Ward, but this is the truth. You could ask Gary, and you know this, Monica, who's his most annoying student ever? It had to be me, because I was the one who was always going, what do you mean? No, that's not, I'm a skeptic. But it has, of all the things I've ever studied, I'm getting the best results, and it just really resonates with how I think. So, but I did make up a title. I call myself a rehabilitative movement specialist because I could have just used movement specialist. In this country, I don't know about other countries, but in this country, the title movement therapist is very specific. It's a specific profession, and it's sort of like psychotherapy, but using movement. So I can't use that. I don't want any ambiguity. And then movement specialist to me was a little too generic because I wanted to make it clear that I mostly work in the realm of people in pain. So I threw in the word rehabilitative, and I just wanted to find a title where people, the hardest thing before I had that title, where I was known around town as a Pilates instructor. I had a Pilates studio and I taught Pilates classes, but I was already doing one-on-one therapeutic work. I trained with a guy named Jean-Claude West for, as you've heard of him many times through me, for decades. And it was a mix of osteopathic techniques and manual therapy and like biomechanics, head exploding biomechanics and movement corrections. And that is what I was doing prior to anatomy and motion. He's the one who taught me muscle energy technique, and he combined it with joint muscle energy technique combined with joint mobilizations, and the hardest thing for me to answer when I was working down in Bishop, California, or for my friends to answer, they're like, Margie, when people ask what do you do, what should I tell them? I don't know. So I had to make up a title, and I just wanted it to be as clear as like, oh, okay. So I call myself a rehabilitative movement specialist. And then I do say to people, and I have so much respect for people who've gone through physical therapy training. So it's really treading a fine line. But in terms of what the clients can relate to, the closest profession as far as what I do is like a physical therapist because I analyze how people move and I try to help people move better. And that's a lot of what they do. And as you well know, like when I teach anatomy and motion courses, I think I taught phase one in Los Angeles a month ago, a little over a month ago, no, 2 months ago, whatever, recently, and I think 90% of the people in the room were physical therapists. So I'm teaching physical therapists, and so there is an overlap. And I used to really hesitate to say that because I don't want to offend somebody who went through the physical therapy, education. I don't have that, and I really honor their education. But I'm now instructing rooms full of people who went through that education and they're coming back for round two. So I mean, I'm probably doing something okay. Um, So that's how I explain it to clients. I'm like, the closest profession that you would know, it's kind of like physical therapy.
Hmm. And your original area of study, though, wasn't even anything to do with bodies. Can you say what you actually went to school for and got a degree in?
Well, you might not even know. So,
Oh.
actually, okay, no, I mean, I actually uh was majored in math and then got a degree in economics because when you're a math major but like not serious enough to like graduate in math, you switch to economics because or at least I did. It was so much easier. So just to graduate, but really what I studied was math. And then so I got it. My first job was a statistical analyst and doing economic research, which for a total hippie company, it was anyway. That's a whole. But you probably didn't know that about me. But I ended up um, going to school. I got a master's in computer science, and that fit my thought process like better than anything I'd ever studied. And I was a software engineer in Silicon Valley for 17 years. And I have to say that so I have a kind of an engineering mindset when I work with my clients, and it's problem solving. So in computer science, now there's an acronym for it, and I can't remember. Agile. Agile is the acronym. I thought about getting back into computer science or programming or whatever, software engineering a while ago, maybe 20 years ago. Or 15 years ago or something, I thought oh, maybe I'll get back into it because it pays so well and I could sit at home in my pajamas. And I live in the middle of nowhere. And everybody was looking, when I looked at the job ads, everybody was looking for something called Agile. But it turns out that Agile, so I looked up the acronym and it was this, I'm going to come back to how I work with people because this is what I'm getting to. Agile was a technique for problem solving, basically, for developing a software system. And it turns out I had worked for a really state-of-the-art company in the 1980s, and I worked with a man named Grady Booch who was invented like object-oriented programming, which is what everybody uses now, and this process for solving problems, which now has an acronym. It's called Agile. But the it's was iterative development. So before, and you'll understand where I'm going in a minute. So before that, when you were solving a problem that had a software solution, it was called the waterfall model. Like you define the problem and you build the software and then you test it and you release it to the client. It was all linear. But the problem with that is, and that's how it worked for decades and decades. But the problem with that is the minute you gave the finished software to the client, one, their needs have changed, or over time their needs would change. And two, the minute they got their hands on it, they'd go, oh, I don't really like it. I needed to do this. But they didn't know that until they actually had their hands on it. So the iterative process was we would define the problem, come up with a solution that we thought was going to work and just build a prototype, not a full blown, and give it to the client. And the client would go, oh, but I really needed to do this. And that's great. And then we'd go back. It was iterations, which is exactly how we work with the body is, well, I don't know for sure this is going to work, but your left knee, every time you step on the left leg, your left knee internally rotates or whatever. And it's really not supposed to be doing that. So let's try. Oh, wait, that didn't work at all. But now I see, look at your shoulder, and we iterate and we don't know for sure. The thing that I do tell my clients, like everything we're doing together, people want a guarantee, is this going to work? And I'm like, everything we're doing is trial and error. It's just not random trial and error. It's very educated and based on decades of experience now, trial and error, but it's still trial and error. And every iteration, we hopefully figure out something that, oh, we're going down the right path. Let's keep going that way. Or, oh, now I see, and that, so that my approach to working with the body, that's a very long-winded answer, but it's very much as I solved problems as a software engineer.
Yeah, making bodies more agile. No, I think it is important to know that that it is an iterative process, and none of us know exactly how a body will respond to an input. We have educated guesses and hypotheses that are based on a lot of experience, and but at the end of the day, it's still all just experimental problem solving, and yeah, it takes a lot of trust, I think.
Yes, but you just said something that, there's sort of two kinds of clients, gross oversimplification, but you'll get it,
Mm,
and two kinds of practitioners. And you know how much belief impacts healing. Like
mm,
I don't think everything we do is placebo effect, but we talk about trusting the process, and there's certainly a component of belief. Maybe my clients believe in me because we iterate and they can see me thinking and my thought. I share with them my thought process. I tell my clients, like, working together is a collaboration.
mm,
What do you think? Does that resonate with you or what I'm saying? Um, but there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of practitioners and there's a lot of people. The practitioners that will say with 100% certainty, this is what's going on and this is why your back hurts. And if you do this, you will get better. And there are clients that are very drawn to that certainty. And they don't necessarily resonate with me.
mm.
So, um,
Have certainty. Certainty is the best.
and
Yeah.
I would love it. I would love it. But the other thing is because I believe in beliefs,
Yeah.
in the power of beliefs, I don't want to say to my clients, well, it's just random. I don't know if it's going to work. I mean, I say, there's a really good chance you're going to feel a lot better and I'm saying that one, because I think it's true, but two, there is a psychological component. Like, rah, rah, cheerleader. I think that does help them believe that
100%.
it helps them trust the process.
One
And
of
I'm
the
saying
biggest,
it, yeah.
sorry to interrupt, Margy.
No, go on.
One of the biggest criticisms I got when I first started working in post-rehab personal training was that I was really, what's the word they used for me? I was too airy-fairy, wishy-washy. Like the way I was describing things, it wasn't, not that it wasn't confident enough, but it was too open for, um, like I'd say something like, "Oh yeah, we can try this. Let's see how it goes," versus "We're gonna do this and it's gonna help you." And I got criticized for that. They're like, "You need to be a bit more direct and you need to be a little bit more certain of what you're saying because it's gonna help the person have confidence in what you're doing and you're not retaining your clients because you don't inspire confidence in the process." And I can totally see how I could communicate more confidently and clearly that would inspire more trust in the client, but still work in a way that wasn't so rigid. But
Mhm.
yeah, man, I struggle with that a lot. But anyway, sorry to interrupt you there.
No, no, that's great. And I have been around you a lot, and I've heard the word maybe come out of your mouth quite a bit.
No
And
way.
that's why I love you. I mean, I think that's one of our connections. Um,
Well, I wanted to ask
but
you more
yeah,
about your transition
okay.
from that math and computer world. So for me, my journey of wanting to get more into the movement side of things and more the therapeutic side of things was triggered by my own injuries and pains that I needed to figure out for myself and
Yeah.
for solutions. But I was wondering for you, what was the turning point or path or pivotal moment that led you from going to movement, Pilates world from the computer world? What was that?
Well, first of all, I got into Pilates back in the, like, as I said, early 90s. So a lot of people hadn't heard of it, and Madonna wasn't doing it yet, and it wasn't. And I just lucked out, and there was a studio pretty much next door to where I worked, and I had flex time, and they had lunchtime classes, and I was not the kind of person that was going to spend I'm going to use 1980 prices, but $80 on a private for myself. Like I just wasn't spending money on myself like that. And there was a studio next door and they had lunchtime classes and it was $12 a class with only four people in the class with all of the Pilates equipment. And I have to just say, nothing I had ever done in my life made me feel like when I took a Pilates class on equipment. I mean, I just felt amazing. And they had a teacher training program at the studio, and I always knew I was living in San Francisco at the time, but I already knew that someday I was going to move to the boonies, which I have. And I thought, they're not going to have Pilates there. So someday I'm going to do the teacher training program and I'm going to bring it with me.
Mm.
And I mentioned that to my teacher, thinking in 10 years, like my retirement career, or 15, whatever. I mentioned it to my teacher and she goes, well, there's a teacher training starting in 3 weeks. You should do it. And I'm like, oh, I'm not ready. And she goes, you're ready. Oh, I'm not ready. You're
Mhm.
ready. And I did come to Pilates. I had been an athlete and I was never a serious dancer like you were, but I was a serious amateur and I spent a lot of time in a dance. So I had come in with body training and I did the teacher training and I started teaching Pilates part-time and then I was doing software engineering part-time, but still like way more software engineering than Pilates. And then there was one of the tech bubble crashes, and I would have had to learn all new technology like I was using an Apple technology that was fabulous, but it didn't win out in the industry like an IBM technology went out, and I would have had to learn that. I'm like, oh, after working with this incredible product, I was like, I can't learn this IBM tech. I'm done. And I made I spent I sort of prostituted myself for a year, not literally, but I but I spent a year like with a crazy commute and I had to like leave my house at 5 a.m., but I got this consulting job that paid ridiculously more money than I and Silicon Valley already paid really well. So it was just crazy, but I did that for about a year and it gave me the financial cushion that I could then go, you know what? I'm going to become a Pilates teacher. And I didn't have to support myself immediately. Although pretty quickly, actually, shockingly quickly, I was able to support myself just doing Pilates. But I did have that cushion. So I made the transition and then I did a classical Pilates teacher training, and then I did a second Pilates teacher training with a woman named Madeline Black. And she taught mostly therapeutic Pilates, and a lot of the people attending the training were physical therapists. It was a mix. And I remember explaining to a friend once in the NKT world what kind of Pilates, I taught, and he said, "Oh, you mean you don't look good naked Pilates?" And so no, that's not what I did. And I kind of fell in love with that, and then I started studying with Jean-Claude, and that was my transition.
Mm. So you mentioned that Pilates was one of the things that made you feel really good. How were you feeling in your body at that phase in life? Were you feeling not great?
Um, no. I felt good. I've had this knee thing. I was in a bad motorcycle accident when I was 16 and really messed up my knee, really bad accident. And both knees, but mainly my right knee, and had many reconstructive surgeries at the time. I was 16, or over the years, like over many years, I had various surgeries, and they all said to me, when you're older, you're going to have osteoarthritis. And, I'm like 16, 20, 21,
Mhm.
whatever. I'm like, what's that? And then, basically every surgery removed more tissue to where I didn't have any cartilage left. And I did end up eventually, uh, it was in 2016, so way after I switched to Pilates. Like that's not part of the story. I did end up getting a knee replacement, and by the time they replaced my knee, my femur was literally boring a crater in my tibia. Like I had no tissue, no cartilage, meniscus, nothing between the bones. I wasn't just bone on bone. Like my femur was boring a crater in my tibia. So I did have that as a lingering thing that would get injured pretty easily. Or it was just my vulnerability. I mean, I was back, I could still backpack and do all these things, but it was my vulnerability. Like if I was going to get injured skiing, it would be my knee. And if my, so, but it, that wasn't really the main factor. The main thing was just literally looking at older people and just seeing, wow, some of them move really gracefully and easily, and some of them they're all stooped over and they look like they're really struggling. And I want to age gracefully. I mean, literally, when I went, when I first took Pilates, it was so unknown. There were two people on the street, on the sidewalk, handing out coupons for a free class. That's how I discovered it. And when they said, "Why, what do you want to get out of this?" I said, "I want to age gracefully." And I think I was only 35.
Wow.
But I will say, like, my knees stopped bothering me when I
Mm,
went backpacking.
mm. Well, you are probably one of, did you say you're 68 now?
I'm on the verge. I'm a
The
month away.
verge of 68.
Yeah.
Well, you're probably
Yeah.
one of the fittest 68-year-olds that I know. But I know that you've told me you haven't always felt so amazingly healthy. And I was wondering, because it was helpful for me to hear when you told me about this story, but you told me about this time where you were in bed for a period with some health issues and that you developed or you learned a mindset or a reframing of your situation through that period. And you told me about
Yeah.
it. And it was during a period where I was also just lying on the ground for hours a day because I couldn't stand up. And it
Oh,
was helpful for me
yeah.
to hear that. Do you
Okay.
remember what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Mind sharing?
Yeah, yeah. So I had one of those nebulas, like whatever, call it chronic fatigue syndrome, whatever you want to call it, which is just interesting to have something that nobody understands. But I'm going
Mhm.
to just say a few words about that because in case anybody's listening who has it or whatever, because when it's nebulous, like people don't believe you. It's all in your head. But my belief is that there have been cluster outbreaks, which would indicate something viral, I would think. But I believe I was part of a cluster outbreak, an undocumented cluster outbreak, because I had been like this incredibly healthy, energetic person, and I developed a low grade fever that was just chronic. And I was exhausted. And I was trying to go see the doctor because that was so not me. And she said, "Don't even bother coming in. There's something going around. What you're describing, I'm hearing like 20 times a day." And at the time, I was engaged to a physician and we were living separately. He was doing a training in Southern California and I was in Northern California. And and his biggest fear, I hope he never hears this. We're still friends, but he'll probably never hear this. But his biggest fear was that doctors' wives become hypochondriacs because they want to get attention from, that was his fear. And so one day I told him, "Hey, I have this flu or something that just won't go away." And he yelled at me and he said, "There's no such thing." And then, which I should have just left him right then and there, but I was like so weak and sick that I didn't. But he came to visit and then he saw me and he knew me. I mean, we were engaged. He knew me. We'd lived together. He knew me really well. And he saw like I was pale and clammy. Like it was physical. It wasn't that I was, becoming a hypochondriac to get his attention. And then he caught it. So
Oh.
then he believed me. Okay, so anyway, I had this nebula. I'm just saying that for all the people who have nebulous things where everybody thinks you're crazy and it's all in your head and you don't want to tell anyone and blah, blah, blah. But I spent a lot of time in bed.
And you were
And
how old at this time, just for context?
okay, so right when I turned 30.
Okay.
Right when I turned 30, yeah. So years. I had it for years. But anyway, Um, and then so I'd be lying in bed on a beautiful sunny day, and everybody'd be out bike riding and going to the park and doing all these fun, and I'd be in bed. And I had this balance. I developed a balance theory, and I would just say to myself, there's gonna come a time in your life where you're gonna wish you could spend more time in bed, and you won't be able to. And remember when I said I sacrificed a year of commute, leaving the house at 5 a.m. And commuting an hour and a half down to way far away to make a lot of money, um, that was like, okay, here's the time.
Mhm.
And I wish I could spend more time in bed. It's happening. And when I first moved to San Francisco, I remember like all the girl, I'd see the girls. I lived right by Golden Gate Park, and I'd walk through the park to the beach every weekend, and I'd see all the girls with their girlfriends, like just. I'd be like, I don't know anyone. I'm all alone. And I'd think to myself, there's going to come a time in your life where you're going to wish you had more time to yourself. And of course, there's been many times since then I'm like, I just need some time alone. So that's my balance theory.
Yeah, yeah. I love that Margy's balance theory that life provides you the balance that you can't or you won't ask for, but maybe not at a time of your choosing. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's certainly been something I've experienced as well. And yeah, I remember being marginally disabled and just not able to walk and on a vacation and watching people on a beautiful sunny day running down the beach and just looking at them with contempt and jealousy. You bastards don't even know how good you have it. And I could have used a little bit of your balance theory in that moment. So, you also mentioned that knee replacement surgery you had. I think it was in 2017 and
19. Yeah.
2019.
No,
Okay.
no, wait, no, 16. Sorry, 16.
2016.
Confusing big major things in my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
2016. Yes.
So I was wondering if, I mean, I know that this has been a huge challenge for you and a huge source of learning. And fortunately, I think in your case, you had a lot of knowledge and a lot of tools you could use to help yourself. And even so, it was still quite a thing for you having this knee replacement surgery. And first, I was wondering if you could shed a bit of light on how did you know that you needed a surgery?
Mm.
Because it's a big choice, and I know
Yes.
that you and a lot of us in our little community that we're pro find solutions that are non-invasive first before getting cut into. So it must have been quite a not a lightly made decision to have a
Oh,
surgery. So
yeah.
how did you make that decision that you should have a knee surgery? Because so many
Well,
people have them without even really exploring other options, you know?
look, a couple of things. So one is, it behooves somebody, we don't know how long they last, but there's longevity in my family, there's centenarians in my family. So the logic is that you want to delay it as long as possible. You weigh out everything, pros and cons, but because we don't know how long they last, and getting what's called a revision or a replacement of your replacement,
Mm.
um, the technology's changed. I'm not current, absolutely current, but it's a much bigger deal, and they don't necessarily work as well. So you'd like to avoid, you want to try and get a prosthesis that's going to last you the rest of your life if
Mhm.
possible. So you kind of balance out like, by then I did know, and I'd heard enough stories of, because of my client pool, but also just at my age, everybody's getting joint replacements at my age, really. I live, let me just say also, when you say to me that I'm the fittest 68-year-old, or one of the fittest, I mean, I have to laugh because I live in the mountains, and I'm like such a wimp compared to my friends who live here. They would just laugh their asses off if they heard you call me the fittest 68. I can't keep up with them, and they're my age or older. But there's a lot of joint replacements around me, and most people who get joint, if you do your research and you go to a good doctor, and most people will say that why did I wait so long? I'm so much happier. I'm not in pain anymore, and I can do all the things I used to do. So I had that knowledge, and then I work very closely with the physical therapists, and the line is, and I think this is still the line, is, oh, you'll know when it's time.
Mm.
You will know. That's what everybody said. And for me, I was trying everything I could do to stave it off. It was impacting my life, but I live right outside of Yosemite National Park, and my passion is hiking. And I had a park pass, and it was the most gorgeous day of the year, and I had nothing on my plate, and I did not want to go to the park.
Mm.
And
That's
that's
how
when I
you
said,
knew.
I was like, oh, it's time. Like, if
Mm.
I don't even want to go up to Yosemite and
Mm.
go for a walk, it's time. And I'm
Mm.
so glad I did it. I'm
Mm.
not really happy about my rehab, but I'm so glad I did the knee replacement.
What weren't you happy about? Tell me about your rehab process.
Um, there are protocols for physical therapy,
Mhm.
and I know everything's changing, and I know some doctors don't even want you to do physical therapy right after the knee replacement. I was in an environment, but a lot of people say the word I hear from my clients and my own personal experience is after a joint replacement, I do think things are changing. So I'm not current, but the word I heard and what I experienced is they crank on your joint because they feel the theory is that there's a window, and if you don't get back your range of motion in that window, you're not going to get it back. But actually, there is research to counter that, and it just, but they also put the fear of God in you that if you don't do the physical therapy, you're, you're going to waste it's really awful. It's really painful to go through it. It's not, I can't say it's a pleasant experience. And my doctor even said, I wish it was your hip. Hips are much easier to to recover from. Thanks. No. But I was like, okay, I'm gonna do what the physical therapists tell me to do. And um I went and they cranked on my knee just like, I was warned they were gonna do. And the other thing that really just bothered me is it just felt so wrong, but I was sort of terrified to question
Mm.
was that they would take me to end range and then just work me there, and then they would take me to the other end range and just like extension and my end range, what
You mean
post
like they
surgery.
would take your leg in their hands and manipulate it, kind of thing?
Yeah, okay, but that's when I say crank on, that's what I mean. Yes. But they weren't taking me through my current range. They would take me to one end of the range and then crank on you there. And
Right.
then they
And then
would,
your
and
body's
then when
obviously
they
a
were
little bit tight and not feeling so safe about that. And
Well, it absolutely triggered, no! Okay,
yeah.
but also, and then they would take my body was craving was, I don't want to go to this end and go further, and then later go to this end further. I want to go, I just was craving like the range, whatever my range was. I wanted the full excursion, and that's not what they were doing. But and also I know one thing about my body is that my body, like if I can get the inflammation out, I'm
Mhm.
good. But
Mm.
if it comes back, like really early on, if it comes back, it sticks.
Mm.
And before I went to physical therapy, I had gotten off painkillers pretty quickly. And my knee, the inflammation was almost gone. It was doing really well. And I went to physical therapy once or twice. It was the second time I went. The first time they didn't do a whole lot. The second time I went, my knee blew up and my body, not the first time, but the second time, like if the inflammation goes away, it comes back right away, my body hangs on to it. And I never got, and so what I did was, because of the work we do, I know a lot of physical therapists personally, and I just called one, a friend, and I was like, I feel like I wanted the full excursion. She goes, "Yep, you're right. That's what your body needs." And I'm like, and they want to, I was afraid to fire my physical therapist because they
Mm.
put the fear of God in you. But I talked it through. I'm like, "Have you ever worked with knee replacement?" She goes, "Yeah, in the hospital, in the home, and in the clinic. I have." So, and she was really smart. I'll just give a shout out Don McCrory in NKT and a little bit in the anatomy and motion world. But
Yeah,
anyway,
John
so
McCrory.
yeah, do you remember her?
I don't know. I'm just giving her a
Okay,
shout
okay. But anyway,
out.
she
Yeah.
talked me, she gave me the confidence, and I fired my physical therapist. And I'm
Mm.
doing really well, but I never got back full flexion. And I'm sorry, I hate to blame anything, like it's too easy the blame game, but I just know
Mm.
that it's because I got that inflammation came back.
Mm. Yeah.
But it's
So,
okay. I have really good flexion. I just don't have it's not that limiting.
and why do you think that you mentioned that if it was a hip replacement, it might be easier. Why do you think that knees in particular are such a hard joint to rehab after a replacement? Because it's not the first time I've heard
Well, yeah, I mean, think about the shape of the bones, like a ball and socket. I mean, what is sort of more or it's not that complex mechanically. It really is kind of a ball. It basically is a ball and socket. So mechanically, um, that's easier to design maybe
it.
and then also, I mean, I actually I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'm just sort of surmising,
Yeah,
but
there's some wild speculations out.
yeah. So I actually I'm gonna say I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, because
Yeah.
I remember working with a woman who she had two knee replacements, also two hip replacements. So lots of joint replacements, and definitely didn't investigate options for other alternatives before getting those replacements, because she wasn't informed. How are you supposed to know? And she had a rough time with her knee replacements. She was in so much pain, and she said to me she couldn't do the in-hospital knee rehab protocols because they flared up her back pain that she'd had prior to all of her knee and hip pains. So she was discharged, hadn't completed her knee rehab, and then I started seeing her, and we needed to work through a lot of things just to get her to a point where she was happy to try to do some knee movements because they were too painful for her back. So clearly there was so much going on with her. Um, but then some people have such an easier time with joint replacements, and it makes me wonder, is there more than just the joint and what's going on in their lives and their belief systems and their support systems? And I know that you had a lot of knowledge and you had support, and you found some really interesting ways of rehabbing your own knee based on what you know. And I was wondering, maybe can you say a little bit of what really worked for you once you got over that initial firing your physical therapist? What did you do that you think really was helpful that maybe you could encourage other people to explore with their own knee rehab, either specifics or general things that you did?
Well, a couple of things. One is as far as generally, what makes the difference in who how hard it is for the person. Yes, and I agree with everything you said. And we all have different pain tolerances, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but I'm a firm believer, an avid believer in prehab.
Mm.
And so I did a ton of prehab. So, for example, just I had my right knee replaced. I made damn sure that I could stand up on just using my left leg. So when it came time in the hospital that I actually had to get up and pee, and you can't do anything without the nurses in a hospital setting, they were shocked at how easily I could just jump out of bed with my left leg and, hobble to the bathroom. But I think what helped me heal was well, and also I even the right knee, even though it hurt, I went in with my quads and glutes and whatever as strong as I could possibly get them because you atrophy so quickly after surgery. So I wanted to go in with as much surplus as I could. So I did prehab, and I think that made a huge difference. And I think everybody should do prehab because I think it makes a huge difference.
Mm.
But I also, once I fired my physical therapist, yeah, I did rehabilitative exercises, but I gave myself permission. I'm like, oh my God, they cut all this. They sawed off the end, they sawed off the end of my femur and they sawed off the end of my tibia. And I'm sorry for people who that makes you squeamish, but and they cut through, who knows what they cut through. I can't ask my doctor a lot of questions because he ended up getting really sick and is unavailable now. There are so many questions, after I did have an opportunity to ask some of them, but like even a year later I wanted to say, well, wait, but I can't ask him. But I gave myself permission to rest and heal.
Mm. Wild concept.
What a wild concept. I mean, I gave myself permission, and I'm just going to say also, I have a really horrible tolerance of opioids, and I was actually taking pretty quickly, switched to an opioid. I forget the classes, but like in the United States, there's some opioids where uh, you can't. You have to hand carry the prescription to the pharmacy, like they're, the ones that people get addicted to. But I couldn't even tolerate those. So I was taking like a mile. It's called Tramadol or Ultram, and it's a different class. Like you could call in a prescription for Tramadol. And that's all I could tolerate. And after a week, I couldn't even tolerate that. Like I'd be staring at my bottle of tramadol and I'm like, I don't know which is worse. So I'm just
Mm.
gonna say this. Like I used marijuana I was stoned for a month and a half or so. I don't know. I don't know if it was a month and a half, but I had a great time. It's like, but yeah, I did rehab, and I mean, I wasn't like, oh, I'm stupid stoned. I mean, I could do things, but I was kind of high for however long I needed to be. That was my painkiller.
Yeah.
And I actually used it on she was 87 at the time. I used it on my mother when she had a hip replacement. She wasn't stoned, but she couldn't tolerate opioids either. And I'm like, Mom, we're doing gummies.
Go mom. Um, and you're in California, so we should just say it's completely legalized, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
In California, using
Yes,
marijuana, and
yes,
in
yes,
Canada it is
yes.
also.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I
my
would,
mom's in Massachusetts and it's legal there.
is it okay? So no one will get sent to prison for
No,
thoughts and opinions stated in this
no.
conversation. Did you ever, this is I'm just curious now, but did you ever in your own exploration of movement experiences, did you ever use THC as a way of
Oh,
exploring movements and like
oh yeah.
enhancing your
Oh yeah.
therapeutic
Oh yeah.
experience?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not something I do frequently, but I can't say it's never happened. It's not a regular practice, but yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, THC unlocks creativity and all kind. I'm gonna honestly say, like, if I had to write an article or a paper, I would often, get a little high, write the paper, and of course, then I would, go back later. But it just got me. It gets creative juices flowing. I'm not against it at all. So yes,
Well, I gotta
very,
say that
yeah,
it
yeah.
helped me so much when I was first trying to get out of back pain. And this was, I think I was very, very disconnected from feeling anything in my body. Have you ever worked with clients where they just can't feel
Oh
muscle?
God, oh my God, yes, all
And
like my mom, my
it's such
husband. No, yeah, but tons of clients, and
it's
you
such
know,
a
I
challenging starting point. If you can't even feel things, it's not
oh yeah,
motivating
yeah.
to do anything
Well,
about it.
what
Nothing feels like it's working.
I mean, when we talked about in the very beginning, social media and do this and this and this will make you, I this is what I try to teach my clients. I think we're so external. Like we want somebody else to tell us. But like for example, I'll just give you an example. My clients will ask me things about nutrition. I know I'm not a nutritionist. That's way up. But just because I'm in the health field, they'll ask me things. And my answer, but it's the same answer to how I would, work with movement. It's just a little more clear. The answer, more people could relate to this answer. When I say when you eat this way, how do you feel? Are you clear-headed or are you foggy-headed? How are your poops? Are they regular? Are they well formed? How do you digest? Are you bloated? Like nobody can tell you exactly what you need. And so my whole thing is trying to help people. I hesitate to say this because I don't want anybody to steal this tagline, and I don't think anyone ever will. And
Come
I
on.
don't know that I'll ever use it, but I wanted to name my business. I was going to rebrand 25 years ago or something I was going to call it Sensational Movement, where it was a play on words. Sensational, like great, but also sensational, if you look it up in the dictionary, literally means of the senses. So it was going to be Sensational Movement, and my tagline was going to be helping you feel better, like italicized bold better, by helping you feel italicized bold, feel better, helping you feel better by helping you feel better. That was going to be my tagline, but I'm like, that is so esoteric. No one in the world is ever going to get it except for my colleagues, maybe, but none of my, like, a tagline should be attracting clients, not your colleagues. But that's what I try to help people do is reconnect so they do feel their bodies because so that they know like, oh yeah, that feels good, that doesn't feel good. When I do this I
Yeah,
feel better, when I do this I feel worse. But at the same time, without, it's the fine line between, for us and our clients, like, you don't want people obsessing like, wait, oh, how did that feel, like, you got to just sort of live and not think about it all the time either. It's
it's
that
true.
fine line.
It
Yeah.
is a fine line. I live in both of those worlds where I'm so hyper focused sometimes on the sensation in my body that it makes me catastrophize. And I just want a little distraction, and that really
Yeah.
helps. But going back to, yeah,
Okay.
when I couldn't feel anything, I still don't really know what to make of that state of why people sometimes can't feel muscles when they move, and they're in a, I don't know what kind of disconnected state that is, but I was certainly there. And maybe it was a lot of injuries, maybe it was a lot of dissociation due to some other traumas and things, but yeah, what really helped me connect to the feeling of my body moving was smoking weed. And I had this realization that, oh, this is what it could feel like to move my body, and I'm getting good feedback from this. It's helping me to understand how to get well. But if I don't have this feedback from moving my body, then I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'm just kind of moving, and I don't know if I'm helping myself. But feeling my body was really important as a very first foundational step. And I really didn't like that I could only access that state with marijuana. I had this sense that for me to actually
Mhm.
get well, an indicator of me being well will be when I can actually just feel my body moving and not have to be under the influence of some kind of drug. So that's my end goal. But it definitely played a massively important role in that beginning stage of my therapeutic process. So I don't know, it leads me to believe that there was something about the state of my nervous system, the state of my being, my state of mind, that I was so cut off from any kind of sensation in my body. And do you know what that is? Like what? Because I've worked with a few people that they just can't feel much in the beginning. And what is that?
Well, I mean, just think about the culture we live in. We're very sedentary. Well, I'll take my family as an example. So I'm from an academic family, and my husband, I'll use my husband. He's super intellectual. You've been to my house, you've seen his book, he's got like philosophy and natural history and geology and world religions and books in different languages. And he's somebody, but he's actually was really athletic and strong and a hiker and a backpacker and, sort of
He's a
legendary around town.
ranger, right?
Yeah, the park ranger, yeah. Um, in fact, I mean, just recently, somebody, I don't know if you do this, I think they do this in other countries too. Like at the tops of peaks, there are peak registers that people sign. Oh, my friend was up here 3 years ago, whatever. And a friend of mine who worked in Yosemite one summer, she just told me, like, she got into climbing all the peaks around there, and she said every register she would look at, my husband had signed. And I told
Awesome.
him that story, and he goes, "Yeah, and that was mostly winter. Like, I mostly skied up to the top."
Oh my God.
So he was a very physical person. He is a very physical person, but he's so disconnected. But I think, like, I'll think about my family. I think it's just because they're so. I think sometimes people are so intellectual that they're just, that disconnects them from their bodies. I think sedentary. It's, how could you connect with your body if you're not a mover? I don't know. Like, can you? you know, um, Sometimes I think sedentary people are disconnected, and we do live in a very sedentary culture. I think a lot of what people do, we also live in a culture that's obsessed with looking thin. I mean, I'm gonna say it, like, as an aging practitioner, I see ooh, they're really attracted to that young, skinny girl with no body fat. They don't want to work with me. They want to work with that, even if it's for injuries. They want that young, skinny girl with no body fat. Like, we live in a culture that's obsessed, so we make our body look a certain way. And when you force your body to do something, you're disconnecting it from it. Sometimes, it's because people have had sexual trauma when they were young, and that, of course, they're going to disconnect from their bodies. So, but I think it's just also a culture where we've cut that out. We've cut out this connection. Like, most traditional cultures have a movement practice like Tai Chi or yoga or whatever it is, and we've kind of cut that out.
Mm. What do you think, other than smoking weed, what do you think is a way that people can start to create a better connection with their body if they're struggling to actually feel things and know, like get feedback from their bodies and know if they're doing, for example, I've worked with a client before who were trying to get to do a movement to help her knee, and I can see her body moving, so I know she's on the right track and she's getting subtle changes over time, but she's not really feeling anything. And I'd love for her to have some more feedback about some gratification from the process, to feel things more.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's a way of getting a better
I,
connection.
I mean, I hate to be so simplistic, but in my experience and my beliefs, like my experience comes from my beliefs and my beliefs come from whatever, that round trip. I'm a huge fan of using a mirror. And I tell my clients that's a tool. Like, just go get a cheapo little $9 mirror. I don't know if you can find $9 mirrors anymore, but that you can move around, because the visual, like, if I'll say to them, yeah, actually, your arch is lowering. Your heel is oh, I don't feel a thing. But if I show them in the mirror and they can see it,
Mm,
or how I put dots on people so they can see their bones moving.
mm,
I'm a huge fan of that. So giving them a visual
mm,
when they can see it, that helps. I mean, I hate to be so simplistic, but a mirror, that
mm,
helps the connection. And then once they have that connection, they don't necessarily, then oh, yes, okay, yes, I see my arch lowering. Oh, that's what it feels like. Then they don't always need the mirror anymore.
mm.
And I still use a mirror a lot. Like, is my
Same.
talus actually internally rotate? Like, how much is it internally rotating? And I'll put a dot on my distal tibia and just, do some movements and watch it.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one thing. And also, I mean, because you've seen me, so my clients, if somebody comes to see me, I'm getting the skeleton out. We spend a ton of time looking at a skeleton, and then they can palpate themselves. So that's another way. It's sort of connecting the visual with another visual, basically. And
Yeah.
palpation, like, oh yeah, put your finger there. Do you feel that moving? Oh yeah. So if they're not going to feel it interoceptively, that's the trendy buzzword these days.
We
Like,
love
give
the
them
trendy buzzword.
yeah.
Well,
There
actually,
are
that makes me think
yeah,
about
okay.
going back to something we discussed at the beginning of this discussion was this could be another role for manual therapy as well, could it not? That if you can't feel much in your body, get someone else to touch you and reconnect some stuff, and that could be beneficial. What do you think?
It could be. It's not where I would go, but I absolutely could be.
As a non-lover of massages, that's not been your path necessarily.
I'm just get such good results with the combination of showing them on a skeleton, showing them on my body, and showing them in a mirror.
Well, this gets me to my favorite Margy Verba
Okay.
quote,
Okay.
and I
Uh-oh.
quote,
Uh-oh.
July 25th, 2022.
Uh-oh.
Visualizing the joint is the mobe. Tell me more about that.
Oh gosh.
Why is being able
Did
to
I
connect
did
that
I say
shot?
that? Okay.
You said that. I wrote it in a note on my phone. I thought it was
Okay.
so good.
Well, yeah, a joint, so everything's controversial. Like, when you think in terms of joint mobes, you think in terms of joint arthrokinematics, which is not flexion extension, but it's rolling, gliding, and spinning, and how the bones are actually moving. It's not a theoretical framework like, flexion extension and angles. And so I visualize, did I say that?
Visualizing the joint
Okay.
is the mode.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think that if I don't know exactly. I can't say I know exactly what I meant by that, but I never do a joint mob or what. So I do joint mobs on people, but I also work over Zoom, and I also don't ever want a dependency relationship with my clients. So everything I do manually, I teach my clients how to use, how to do to themselves, like using bands or whatever, or and I just say when I'm doing the mob, my hands are generating an external force, and we're going to find something else, gravity or a band or a ball or something that's going to generate that external force that my hand would. But I just believe, I don't really know what I meant by that, but I guess I never do it without showing. I want them to be thinking, like if they're doing a mob for internal rotation and flexion, I want them to be picturing the rolling and the gliding and the sliding and what's supposed to happen, like really visualizing the bone. There's no research to back this up as far as I know, but I believe that that the MOB is more effective if the person can visualize the rolling, the arthrokinematics. I would never
Yeah.
use that word with my
I
clients, but
I remember that when we were talking about this, and this was back in, well, it was 2022, and we were talking about let's meet up and just dis discuss how we can mobilize every single joint in the body and
I
film
know.
it, um
Yeah.
we
You
got
mean
into some
self-mob specifically, right?
yeah, self mobs,
Okay,
and
yeah.
we were having a lot of conversations about this,
Okay.
and yeah, we were just talking about, well, back to what you were saying in the beginning about education is a main thing that you do and how important it is to conceptualize the part of your body that you're actually trying to move differently. And I think we were also reflecting on, well, it was a big moment of light bulb for me in it was an anatomy and motion course at some period. And you know that moment where we're discussing the joint motions of the hip, and I think Gary Ward says something like, and the joint is actually nothing. It's just the space between the bones. So we're not actually
Uh,
moving the joint, we're
yes.
moving the bones.
Yes.
And I had this moment of being able to actually conceptualize joints in a whole new way that I just became
Uh,
more aware of how my body could move. And just
uh-huh.
that opened up some kind of new freedom for me, just being able to visualize it. And I think that that's what you were touching on there, which is that idea of if you can
Probably. Yeah.
conceptualize what bones you're
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
move, you're going to be able to move them so much more than if
Okay.
you just start thinking about, I don't know, stretch my hip and
Yeah, okay. I think I know the context now. Yes. Because I have a graphic, and I don't know if we want to screen share or whatever, but I have a graphic, but I believe there's okay. I believe there's a round trip between conceptualize experience. So you can look at a textbook, or I get out the skeleton and I can conceptualize, oh, when I do this, my scapula is doing this and my arm bone is doing this in the glenohumeral joint is doing this and the scapulothoracic joint is doing this and whatever, and I can conceptualize it. And I believe that being able to conceptualize it helps me actually experience the relationship between the bones. But I
Mhm.
also believe that experiencing the relationship between the bones
Mhm.
gives me a better conceptualization. So I think of it as
Yeah.
a round trip process. But that's not just how I work with myself, that's how I work with my clients. Like
Mhm.
it's very much we're getting out the skeleton, and they're going
Mhm.
to be looking at, I want them to be conceptualizing as they're doing visual. I say, like, I'm, on my website, and I've probably showed it to you, one of my favorite YouTube videos is these belly dancing skeletons, and I have it on
Yeah.
my website, and I'm like, I want you to picture your moving body, your skeleton, because yes, it's integral. That's probably what I meant. It's
Mhm,
absolutely integral to everything I do, including joint mobilizations.
mhm. Yeah. Um, I have a question that I'm actually really curious to get your
Okay,
answer on. So I personally came from a place where when I first needed to get help for my body, I was poor. I was just out of university and was living on
okay,
student loans and credit
yeah,
cards and yeah, pretty shit financial
yeah.
situation. But I knew I needed to get some help. So my strategy was I'll just educate myself. And that way, like I couldn't afford physio sessions, like you said, even back in the day when it wasn't as expensive. I couldn't afford that. I needed to pay my rent and eat. So
Hmm.
I only had maybe, I don't know how much I had to invest in my own health, but it wasn't a lot. So
Yeah.
I'm curious if you were to give advice to someone in that position, if they only had, say, $100 and that was their budget for, I need to get well, my back hurts. What should they spend that $100 on? What would you recommend? How do they do that strategically?
Well, I'm gonna give you a little bit of an aside because you brought up this topic, and I'll be thinking about it. I don't have an answer off the top of my head, but um, part of my pricing and part of my practice, like I'm just gonna say that people with my qualifications and experience level in a big city are charging at least twice what I do,
Mm,
at least twice as much. And a integral part of my practice. So in my world, my husband's a park ranger. Everybody in my family are teachers. My friends are musicians and they work for nonprofits trying to save the world, environmental activists, whatever. Musician, I think I already said musicians. And part of my personal professional mission is serving my own community. So I don't want to just serve wealthy people.
mhm.
Um, so I don't really have, I would say find somebody like me and to sweet talk them into working with you. One thing you
Actually,
can
what I
do,
did too,
yeah,
that was
okay,
part of my strategy,
okay,
is
yeah,
I found people, I attracted
yeah,
people willing
yeah,
to give me free advice and
yeah,
mentor
yeah,
me.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
that worked
And
well.
actually, so the other thing is, as much as there's horrible information on YouTube, be very buyer beware or free non-buyer beware. Um, there's some really good stuff. So I guess what I would do, like I have a lot of stuff on YouTube. I'm not saying my stuff is really good. I'm terrible at production and I'll just admit it. And even my content, like every video I've ever made, and by now I don't think I've made a new one in quite a while. I look at it now and I'm like, oh my God, I could have said that in half the amount of time, or nobody's gonna watch that 11-minute video, or watch it, or oh, I can explain it so much better now because we're always evolving. But I do have a lot of free content on YouTube. That's what I would say. I would say, here's my YouTube channel, and I recommend these videos. That's what I do, actually. I have a lot of poor people in my life. I live right next to a national park. Everybody who works for a national park is poor, and a lot of them have back injuries. And I work for, like I said, people in where I live are not wealthy. I live in a poor rural community, so I have a lot of free content. And it's not, or I wish I want to organize it and I want to make it really useful, and it's not. It's sort of organized. But I also I keep track of other really good free content. I have mentored for years now under a wonderful pelvic health physical therapist who's well known. She should be way better known, kind of like Gary, but she's well known, and Julie Weeb, and she has fabulous free content, and I keep track of a lot of people have very good free content. So that's what I do is I would probably try to direct people, or I mean, because I'm a softie, if I liked the person, I would just, if somebody came to me, I would just say, I'll give you a free session. Or if they could trade for something, I might offer that if they had a skill that I could somehow do some social media for me? No.
I did that a lot actually. I did a lot of trades back when I was first learning some skills. People were fortunate, or I was fortunate enough that people kind of saw that I wasn't very smart or skilled at the time, but I was enthusiastic. So my enthusiasm came across as being intelligent, which it definitely wasn't. But people thought that maybe I was a good practitioner at the time, so they'd offer like, "Hey, do you want to do a swap?" And I'd be so intimidated. But then I got some treatments, and then I got to build up some of my confidence and my skills too. And so yeah, really great idea. If you even if you're not a movement or manual therapy provider, if you have a skill like accounting, um, I
Accounting, I've had people clean my studio and
yeah,
trade,
nice.
you know.
Trades, viable
I've
option.
always traded for cleaning. I love trading.
Yeah. So go email Margy, tell her you'll clean her house, and you might get a QL release out of it.
But
Um,
also, I'm really, the whole thing of like my website, I think it's actually in two different places on my website, the expression give a person a fish, they eat fish for a day, teach them how to fish, and they eat fish for the rest of their lives. And my mission is to teach people how to fish. Like, so there, it lends itself well to going to YouTube. And then I say, like, I say if you actually get through this playlist, I have a playlist on pronation and supination, and what is pronation and supination? How do you pronate? How do you whatever? I say if you get through the playlist and you want to send me some videos of you doing this stuff, I'll critique you, for free. But no one ever does that.
hmm, missing out.
I know.
One last question, Margy, and then
Okay.
we'll try to wrap up a
Okay.
bit. But I just want you to know I haven't even gotten through like half of these questions I
Well,
wrote
let's do
down.
this again. I love talking to you. I could talk to you all day.
Oh, shucks. So
Let's do
you
it
already
again.
you mentioned your husband, Jack, and
Yeah.
you can talk about him because he's deaf and he'll never listen to this podcast. Just kidding. I love you, Jack. So in many ways, he's the opposite of you in terms of you're so invested in learning about your body and doing things to take care of it and prehab and movement practice and whatnot. And he's been through a lot. I think he's had a hip replacement. Did you say that he fractured his femur at one point? Or
My husband, so first of all, let me just say, when you say we're opposites, literally, I'm November 18th. He is May 18th. We are literally polar opposites. But anyway, the poor guy has, people say lifestyle, you're not doing everything. I mean, he does everything we're supposed to do. He's a park ranger. We live outside. He spends time in nature. He gets outside every day of his life and skis or kayaks or hikes. He meditates. He has intellectual stimulation. He has love in his life. And for the most, I mean, there's no restaurants where we are. We cook at home and it's mostly, I mean, it's organic, lots of vegetables, blah, blah, blah. He is doing everything that we're supposed to do. And the poor guy, so his femur was fractured into 12 pieces when he was 18.
God.
He was hit by a drunk, he was on a motorcycle, hit by a drunk truck driver. It did pay for his college education, and he compensated, super athletic, hiker, blah, 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 skier, backcountry skier, rock climber, totally, compensated really well. He's had a heart attack.
Mm,
He has had two brain tumors.
mm,
And it's a condition called acoustic neuroma, so it's made him virtually deaf. He has had, I'm not going necessarily in the right order, he fractured his hip full moon ice skating up in Yosemite. And uh, that didn't go very well. The rehab didn't go very well. He's had a knee on this, all on the side of the shattered. Okay, the hip fracture was his right side, but his femur that was shattered into 12 pieces and then became structurally shorter when they
mm,
recreated his femur. He has had a knee replacement and hip replacement on that side. No surprise there. The knee replacement didn't go very well, and he got two DVTs, and he had to have a manipulation under anesthesia, and then got compartment syndrome.
God.
and almost died. And so like, and okay, fractured hip replacement, knee replacement. Oh yeah, and then prostate cancer, and then more, the most recent was he got bacterial, spinal meningitis and almost died if I hadn't been home, and he was helivac to the hospital, blah blah blah. If I hadn't been home, he would have died. And then at the hospital he got C. diff. So he's just, but he does everything right, like that you're supposed to do. Some people just have bad luck.
Yeah.
So
So what I
um
wanted to ask you
yeah,
is like obviously he's been through a lot and
yeah.
there's things that you have skills that you could potentially help him, but does he let you help him?
If you asked him, he would say, "Oh yeah." Like, we'll often be on a trip with friend, like a river trip or a backcountry trip with friends, and they'll get an injury and I'll work with them, and they'll look at him and they'll be like, "Oh, do you get to do this?" Like, I give him extras, and he goes, "Oh yeah." And he does, sort of. But
Sort of.
sort of. It's kind of a spousal. I mean, I don't think all spouses are like this, but I do work with a lot of physical therapists, that we co-refer, and I will say to each other, like, tell my husband to XYZ, because he won't listen to me, but he'll listen to you. And
Well,
so
that was my point that like a lot of us we have loved ones that we can
yeah,
see are suffering and
yeah.
you know that you have something that could help them, but I think it's just because we're so close to them in that context, it's hard to offer help and it's hard for them to receive help. And the more you push sometimes, the less likely they are to take the advice. And I wonder like what should we do? What do you do in
Well,
that
in okay, so
situation?
in my husband's case also, though, because he's so intellectual, he's as skeptical as I am. So like, I'll tell him things and he'll look at me. Now, like, I'm speaking Chinese, and I'm like, I explain things to people all day long, and people seem to understand my words, but you don't. But it'll sort of be like, no, what do you mean that's what I'm supposed to? Like, he has his own opinion about, even though I'm so educated, Um, so that's part of it. I mean, well, and the other thing, I'm just going to say this, it's the same with my mother. I have a 91-year-old mother. And to her credit, I gave her a half-hour program. She's a creature of habit. I recorded it into her phone. She puts it on. I spy when I'm visiting, I spy on her doing it. I'm like, "Oh my God. Really?" I'm like, "Mom, slow down. One, two, three." I'm like, "No, you're supposed to feel the movement. Slow down. Experience. Three, four." But anyway, but she does it every day of her life, and my mother has no pain at all and can walk down. I watched her walk down 5 steps like without holding a banister. I'm like, how? No 91-year, yes, of course, some 91-year, but believe me, 91-year-olds who can walk down steps without holding a banister is the exception, not the rule. She didn't even hesitate. So, but it's the same thing. Like, they're my mother. So older people, or maybe everybody, I don't know. Like, I'm thinking out loud on the spot. But so my husband is 80, my mom is 91, and they have limited energy. Like, I don't. This is another thing that drives me crazy about social media, and I'm even hearing Peter Attia say this now. He had a whole panel of, like, really intelligent influencers, and they're all like, "Oh, anybody who tells you that you're not going to age and things aren't going to change, bullshit." Like, of course we're going to be lose capabilities and be weaker and more tired, and yeah, I mean, bullshit. So I mean, I'll say that from my own experience. I mean, I used to do like 10 things in a day, and now if I do five, I'm like, I'm exhausted. But so my husband has limited time or energy, limited energy, and he wants whatever energy he has, and I have to support this.
Mm,
He wants to be out in a kayak on a beautiful lake,
mhm,
watching bald eagles, or hiking in the aspens that are turning yellow right now. Like,
mm. Sounds way
and he
better than
doesn't
being
he
in rehab.
doesn't have the energy to do a little program
Mhm.
and then go kayaking. He
Yeah.
just doesn't. And
Priorities.
if he has to make that choice, he's going to go skiing. And I have to say, like, we have something in the United States called you get when you're 65, you go on Medicare, and then they want you to do Medicare wellness checkups. And he just did his first one at age 80.
Mhm.
We're supposed to, but anyway, so they take all this blood, they do all this blood tests and all this stuff. And what do they call it? His vital sign. I mean, his markers are incredible.
Mm. Well,
Like all
done.
his whole blood panel, everything. Like, you know, so
Mm.
his lifestyle is serving him.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So
Well,
I,
Margie,
yeah.
I have one. I said that was the last question, but I actually have one final question that I want to ask everybody because I think it's interesting. So let's imagine that you are going to be wiped off the face of the earth tomorrow, and no one will remember that you were here. What is one thing that you would like to see different about the world that maybe while you were here, you played a role in, but no one would remember that you ever existed and had anything to do with it?
Um, um, well, y- you're asked, there's a context.
Any
And
context you'd like.
okay, I mean, the context is what is happening politically in the United States. And I am a political activist. I've been much more of a political activist in my past than I am now, but I am still a political activist, and I would like to see peace on earth and democracy.
Hmm, me too.
And I'd like to think I I think that anybody working on that, it's a huge collective, and some people are dedicating their lives to that, and I am not dedicating my life to that, although with what's going on in my country right now, I don't know. I mean, I've literally considered quitting my business and going to law school and becoming an immigration lawyer. I literally, um, I'm still considering doing something like that. Um, but yeah,
Hmm,
that's my answer.
hmm. Well, Margie, thanks so much. This has been so
Well,
fun.
Monica, I love you, and I just always love talking to you. And I'm going to tell, just to close, I'm going to tell one funny story
Please.
about us.
Oh no,
When you
nervous
came,
now.
no, it's not a bad one. You came to visit me for a few weeks, and we went hiking, because of where I live, and just gorgeous places and lakes and high mountains and snow and we were always talk where we were intrigued by social media and thought that we should be like to grow our businesses, and we probably actually should be and should have been. um, if we were really business oriented, we'd be much more active on social media. But everywhere we went, we would say, well, if we were good at social media, we'd be taking pictures right here, like Monica and Margie hiking in Yosemite. And I don't think we did any of that.
Um,
So I
did
love you for that.
it. Oh, I'll have to get back and visit you sometime soon.
Absolutely. And I'll make it over there to see you someday.
Might have to make a little full-time move over here and escape some of the drama, but we won't get into that.
We
Um,
won't get into that. Too much family. Not, I'm not
could
leaving my
you
family. Yeah.
could you if people want to find some of these free videos you promised and find you on the interwebs, where's a good place for them to go?
Okay, my website is Flow Motion with an F as in Frank, like go with the flow, Flow Motion Education, all one word, .com, and I'm pretty sure there's a link to my YouTube site. I'm pretty sure. And there are playlists and it's sort of organized like feet and back and pelvic floor. I will just say, and I'm sure everybody who puts out content on YouTube feels this way, that everything is obsolete and I need to redo all my videos. But actually, they're pretty good.
The
And
quality is great. The quality is great. There's nothing
so
has changed in what you need to informationally deliver. Like the body is not changed much.
yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
I mean, just
we
the way I would explain things, I'd
yeah,
be a little more concise. But
yeah.
anyway, yeah.
Well, people should go check that out. Find your video for Margie's QL release. Find find
I think I do actually somewhere.
do
Maybe
you?
have a self-release of the QL.
Amazing. The infamous
Maybe. Yeah,
Margie
maybe.
QL release. See if we can find that one. Yeah, and if you need someone to pat you on the back and tell you it'll be all right, and then clean her studio, he might just join us in person. Just make the trek out to Mono City, go on a hike, and visit the beautiful Lee Vining and eat at one of the local. I think what did we get? We got some pretty good, like a poke bowl or something in Lee Vining. Or no, wait, that was in the casino in Reno.
In
Oh
Reno,
my
in the
gosh.
seedy, remember how seedy that neighborhood was?
Oh
I
my
had to walk you
God.
to the bus station in the morning. I wouldn't let you go alone. There were like people shooting up heroin on the sidewalk.
Oh,
I
good
shouldn't be
time.
laughing. And I wasn't going to leave you until I saw you on that bus.
Mm. Oh
It
my
was
God.
sketchy. But anyway,
Good times. On that note, it's been
okay.
great, Margie. Um, we'll have to talk again soon.
Yes. I want to interview you.
Oh,
Okay. All right. Bye.
bye.